Hello and welcome to the Ikario podcast. In today's episode, we're talking with Sam Overton, who is a dating coach based out of the UK. So Sam runs a website and a business called Fluid Social, and for the past 7 years, he's helped men improve their dating life, improve their relationships, and their social skills as well. In this conversation, we talk about dating. We talk about the state of the world today as it pertains to masculinity, to relationships, to technology. This conversation kind of goes in a bunch of different areas, but it's all centered around helping men be better in their relationships and their dating lives. So if that is something that you are interested in doing, that's something you want to cultivate in your own life, then you are going to love this episode. As always, you can go to the show notes, ikario.com/038 for today's show notes. Now I just need to point out that at the end of the episode, I do accidentally mention that this is episode 37 and I send you to the wrong link. So if you hear 037, I actually mean 038. If you want to leave a voice message, go to anchor.fm/ikario. So that's all the housekeeping out of the way. We hope you enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome to the Ikario podcast, where we help you break free from the human zoo, optimize your life, and become a force to be reckoned with. Once again, with your host Ollie, and no, I am not joined by Shane this time. I'm joined by Sam, who is a dating coach from Fluid Social. That is fluid.social. There's no .com at the end of that, right?
There's no .com. No,
it's just fluid.social.
Fluid.social.
Okay, you just wanted to be a little bit different, just
a bit edgy, right?
A bit edgy.
Going through a phase. It's 2017. Things were different back then.
Went through a phase, I can't just go with the crowd.
Yeah.
So you're a dating coach, and just to give the listeners and the audience a little bit of a backstory.
Yeah.
We came into contact with you through Ryan. So Ryan hired you as a dating coach.
Yeah.
And Ryan, by the way, guys, Ryan does not mind me saying that. He made it explicit that he doesn't mind me saying that. So he hired you as a dating coach, and me and Dean actually bumped into you randomly in Lisbon.
Yeah.
Without Ryan.
City.
Yeah, without Ryan even letting us know that you were in the city. It was like really random that you were there. We could barely believe it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've been visiting Lisbon past couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And
been there for 12 days now.
Yeah.
Soaking up the atmosphere.
You're leaving tomorrow, right? Or
yeah, I'm leaving tomorrow evening. Back to London.
You enjoyed it?
Yeah, I really like this city. I think it's a fun place, man. It's got a good atmosphere. People are relaxed. There's that sort of European lethargic sitting outside drinking coffee or cocktails atmosphere, which is always a lot of fun. And yeah, I like it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Is this kiosk kind of culture? You walk and you see a kiosk that's serving coffee, and it's just like the locals are sat there just for the whole part of an afternoon.
Yeah, people can just do it all day. It reminds me of Brazil in some ways, but it's got the sort of French, sitting outside with a coffee and a cigarette vibe as well. It's very relaxed. I can only imagine what it's like outside of COVID times. Right? I imagine it's a lot busier, a lot more chaotic, but also fun.
Yeah.
Is it?
Well, yeah. I mean, so I've been told that by the locals.
You haven't been here outside of COVID time either, have you?
I mean, we've been here now for like a year and 3 months.
Right.
Well, I've been here for a year and 3 months. And
so I have no reference of how that fits into the COVID timeline, because it just seems like, I don't know if it's been a week or a couple of years.
It's just all a blur.
Just all a blur, isn't it?
Well, basically, for the most part, it's been locked down. So
okay.
Yeah. But I've been told that things get pretty damn busy.
Yeah.
As in, especially on a Saturday night, things just get absolutely rammed.
Sure.
Like wall to wall with people. So
yeah,
got that to look forward to.
Yeah, I'll be back.
Hopefully so. All right, so let's dive into it then. So you are a dating coach. How long for? How long have you been doing this for?
Well, so I started when I was at the University of Nottingham, and I sort of I graduated in 2015, and during the final 2 years there, so sort of starting in 2014. I started working with students who have learning difficulties, particularly Asperger's syndrome, autism spectrum disorders, and some with ADHD and ADD as well. That's attention deficit hyperactive disorder and attention deficit disorder. There's a lot of blurred lines between them, but essentially I would help students who came from high school and had a lot of active help at school, right, from tutors and specialists. But as these students transition to university, there tends not to be the same level of tailored support for them. And it's increasingly a problem in the UK that America's a little bit ahead of us, particularly LA has a lot of research going into this, like how can you help students with these problems transition? So I wasn't ready to go. I didn't want to get a grad job, right? I didn't really want to get a job. I don't like working. So
I love that.
and so I found a job where I could be a peer mentor, which is essentially a social skills mentor, where I would sit with my client in dinners, in lectures, I'd take him out to bars eventually, and I would monitor his social behavior and take notes on it, right? And then report my notes back to my superior, who's a trained behavioral specialist. And so during that process, I obviously learned a lot about behavior and about teaching and about the way that we behave, right? About the issues that we face, anxieties and different difficulties that men face. So I did that for a couple of years. And at the same time, I had a growing interest in meeting women after sort of breaking up with my girlfriend at university, which was traumatic for me, right? It was a bit of a car crash. Emotionally, it's harrowing, that experience, right? When you've been with someone for ages and then you break up. I think most of the guys watching this have probably had an experience like that. And you feel completely lost at sea. You're like, I literally don't know what to do or what to say. And I feel like I'm the only person that doesn't know how to act around women, right? That's the feeling. It's almost like you feel like you are the only person that literally women can see through you. They know that you don't know what to do. You know that they're not going to find you attractive. And it's not like, I don't know, it's not even, you're not even dwelling in it. It's just this like quiet knowledge that you're not attractive to women for whatever reason. Maybe because you've been off the market for so long and you feel like other people are ahead of you. So I had a growing interest in the process of changing that, right? Changing my belief and taking whatever action was necessary. And so I sort of combined both of the things that I was focusing on. One, which was me proving to myself that I could be attractive to women, and the other, which was helping men to improve their behavior. And I wrote syllabuses for the students. I started, writing syllabus and things. And so I had a really nice point at which what I loved doing and what I was well versed in, sort of educated in, they crossed over, right? And I recognized that there was a market for neurotypical men. Neurotypical meaning without barriers, without ADD or ADHD or problems like that. I knew there was a market for guys who were simply lacking in confidence or who were feeling the way that I was feeling after my breakup. And so I tapped into that market and started a YouTube channel. I started a website and a YouTube channel. And I got some work experience with a few different companies in London, with one called Kezia Noble and one called The Baxter Lifestyle, which was an interesting one.
The Baxter Lifestyle.
It was good fun. And so I got some experience working underneath various different coaches, dating coaches, who sort of fielded themselves in different areas of the industry, right? On the one hand, you have the very sort of more politically correct dating coach. And on the other hand, you have the more sort of pickup artist side. And for me, that idea when I was 2021, pickup artistry seemed really interesting to me, because there's a moment where you hit rock bottom, where an idea can pull you out of it and you suddenly become really extreme in the other fashion, right? So you could have like the depressed atheist, the nihilist who believes that life is meaningless, and suddenly some spiritual guru finds him and pulls him up, and he is going full in for that now, right? Because the change is so drastic that you buy into ideas really easily because you feel like you need to give everything to this idea which is pulling you up from the rubble. And so pickup artistry really appealed to me at that time. Not for the right reasons, right? More from a sense of power, wanting, I suppose, the power to be able to make women like me, rather than for any sense that I actually, had a direction in my life and I wanted to follow that direction. It was more like from a place of weakness, right? But over time, I started to sort of, grow and learn and understand myself better. And you sort of understand the nuances better, right? I think there's an age for guys between like maybe 17, 21, 22, where you're quite vulnerable to extreme ideas.
Quite impressionable.
Exactly. But for sensible people who are, I suppose, interested in continuing to learn and to develop their ideas and to develop their opinions, they can easily temper that extremity and start to find a sort of middle ground, So then after working with this company for a while, I started getting my own clients. I started skimming, clients off the companies that I was working for and taking those clients for myself, which I was allowed to do, right? So that wasn't actually an undercover shady business. But,
Okay.
I was allowed to do that. And then I started working for myself, and guys started watching my YouTube videos and reaching out to me privately. And 7 years later, here I am in Lisbon for some reason.
Bloody hell! So this has been years.
Yeah, but it feels like everything happened so fast in the first 2-3 years, and then sort of steadily moves on from there. But yeah, it was a whirlwind at the start, and I mean, at least that's the way it feels. And now it's sort of just gentle and slow progress. Slowgress. Yeah.
So you initially hired dating coaches yourself?
No, I actually never did.
Oh.
I was inspired by some dating coaches and some strange motley crew of characters on YouTube who were all doing different things, and I found it all fascinating. Right, I think for me it was this sense that it was learning that it was possible for a man to see a woman in the middle of the day and go and talk to her, and that could actually be a fruitful thing to do, and that it could actually work, right? You might actually just go up and say hello to a woman and she might like you, and you might actually end up being in a relationship with her. When you realize that that's possible, it's been hidden in plain sight. It's like, obviously you can do that, but you're not going to. No one's going to do that, right? No one does that. And so it was one of those kind of moments where you see something that was always there and you've always seen it, but realizing that you can actually do it makes you think, like, what else am I looking at in my life? What else am I seeing throughout my day that's hidden in plain sight? The opportunities that are right here that I'm not paying attention to. I'm not able to bring the value out of them that I otherwise could. And so for me, when I did my first ever, approach by myself, where I went up to a girl by the bus station and started talking to her, and she was smiling and she was warm and she was receptive, it was just like kind of mind-blowing, because it validated that this was something that was possible to do, and that you're not going to die if you do it or be arrested or get beaten up, So then it was quite an easy process from there, because I just knew that this is what I was going to do. Like, there was just no doubt in my mind. It was like, I know it's possible, right? And I know that I'm good at teaching. And I know that I love going outside and meeting people. And so it was really obvious to me.
And that bus stop experience, you remember that as being the first time that you...
Yeah, I remember that.
Like a light bulb went off, the beliefs that you had maybe around...
Yeah.
You mentioned I'm not going to get arrested. Yeah. I'm not going to get beaten up, or basically something dramatically bad is not going to happen if I just go up and talk to a woman.
Well, it's like there's a point in your life, as I said, when you're being dragged up from the rubble, where it's like, I don't know specifically where the light bulb was, but there was a whole load of light bulbs going off, right? Sometimes it's the cliche of like, after the darkest night comes the light, or whatever they are. But it really is true. Like, the more low or down or depressed you feel, just the other side, there's an idea just waiting to pull you up from that and give you the other side, right? It's the bipolarity, the depressed mode, and then the high. And I was just in the light at that point. Like, it was light bulb after light bulb. I was learning so much. I was consolidating my learning and experience. I got into the more entrepreneurial mindset at the same time I was finding Tim Ferriss and other people like that who were just blowing my mind with like how you could live your life, right? Traveling and making money without needing to sit at home at a desk all day. It was just loads of light bulbs,
Yeah. Did you read The 4 Hour Work Week?
Yeah, that book was really, really, really groundbreaking for me.
I bet.
I think that it didn't have to be that book. I think with books like that, I could have found one of the other books about, about designing your life and sort of hacking work. And I think whatever book someone finds as the sort of gateway drug is always the most powerful, right? If you're looking for meditation, right, and you get introduced to spirituality, whether you find like Sam Harris's book, Waking Up, or whether you find Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now, whichever one you find first is going to be the one that has the biggest impression on you because all the information's new, right? And then anything thereafter, even though there's great information, it's not going to hit you in the same way. So for me, that was the 4-hour work week was just like mind blowing. So I was just like, oh my God, I'm free to live how I want. Like I'm free to do any of this stuff. So that was cool.
Quite a mind blower. Yeah, so many people have the same, or they did have the same reaction when that book came out. I know that a lot of people kind of, it was like a paradigm altering book when they read it.
Massively. It's like the whole fear setting thing of like, shall I make this decision or not? So people are so scared to travel, and the realization that if you just figure out what's the worst thing that can happen, and then imagine that happening and saying, well, then what? I'm going to be okay. I don't die if that happens. I just get on with it and figure it out. And that's still better than staying here.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah. For those that aren't aware of that, so obviously all the resources for this episode are going to be in the show notes, but what Sam just mentioned is an exercise by Tim Ferriss called fear setting. And he has a TED talk on this. Great TED talk. So I'm going to stick that in the show notes below so you can check that out as well and have a look. But so that's really interesting. So one of the things that I find that really fascinating, how there was this sort of intersection, like a few things in your life just seem to coalesce. So you worked in a mentorship capacity with people with ADD and ADHD and stuff like that. And around, within that, you also went through a breakup that was pretty harrowing.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the breakup was just before, right? All of that stuff kind of came together after the breakup. It was like I broke up with her. I started getting really interested in male-female dynamics.
Yeah.
And I wanted to work with people. I wanted to stay in the city of my university, right? I didn't want to go home during the holidays. I wanted to stay there.
Yeah.
And, talk to girls in the day in the city whilst I could stay there and work, right? So I had this very weird kind of university life there where I was working and doing university and meeting girls in the day. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing that you mentioned, is that power thing. Is you have there's like a spectrum. You sort of more wholesome, politically correct sort of dating coaches, like people like Mark Manson, for example, who wrote the book Models, which is pretty damn politically correct when it comes to dating advice.
He just presents himself as a sensible, normal guy who's just offering good advice to intelligent people about how they can better express themselves as a man, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then you have the other end of the spectrum, which is just your hardcore pickup artists use tactics and.
Yeah, I mean, usually emotionally damaged, insecure men who had, who had difficult childhoods or difficult upbringings, and that's now manifesting itself in, as we were talking about, the sort of power, that sense of like, that I never felt noticed and now I'm getting noticed, and it's a much more intellectually driven thing. It's like they're driven by this, like, I need to get these results, I need to prove to the world that this is the way I am. And obviously there's nuance in between, and I'm not saying that everyone who feels like that's speaking to them is emotionally damaged. But there certainly is this spectrum, right, of the sort of emotionally healthy to emotionally damaged side, right? And most, people tend to fall on that spectrum. Everything seems to be shifting much more towards I don't even want to call it politically correct, but to the sort of rational breakdown of information, like what information is helpful to people, what is a healthy direction to be moving your life in, and if you move in that direction, how can you leverage the value that you're building for yourself in the dating market, and how can you allow that to improve your dating life, right? And that I think things are moving in that direction.
Is that something you've noticed?
Yes.
Because I'm not. I've read quite a few books on dating and stuff like that, but I wouldn't say I'm part of, any online dating communities or anything to that degree. But I'm assuming, like, within your line of work, you sort of have, your ear to the ground on this more than
Yes.
certainly more than most. So is that something you've noticed, that the emphasis is slowly shifting towards the sort of more wholesome?
Definitely, it's shifting in that direction. When I came into the industry in about 2016, 15, 16, right? It was much more. It was quite well known, right? But it was much more underground. You had like one underground company in the UK called daygame.com, which was started by some guys in London that I know. But it was very much like an underground, like layers thing. Like every guy's had layers. They had like these little sub communities, and it was very kind of edgy and underground. And now it's not that way at all, right? It's something that, I mean, you should be able to talk about publicly, right? And justify. And it's definitely taken much more from self-help arena, the personal development. I prefer to say the personal development arena than it did before. Before it was like, say this and bang 10 women in a week. And now it's much more about like, it's much more about like the holistic side of things, right? This is how you have a satisfying life. You focus on your health, your physical and your mental health, your wealth and your ability to create wealth, and your love, your family, social and romantic relations. And the more balanced you can keep those three aspects, the more satisfying, generally speaking, your life will be. And that's always been true for me. If ever I feel like I'm off balance in my life, or I'm not quite centered, I'm a bit confused, it's usually I write down health, wealth, and love, and I figure out which area of this is falling by the wayside. And sometimes it can be as simple as you've realized you haven't messaged your family in a week, right? And you're feeling, as men, we're not always able to figure out the reasons why we feel emotions, right? So we might feel sad and we'll think, I'm just feeling sad, right? It's just my hormones. It's like, no, there's a reason for it. But women know the reason usually. Women are like, I'm sad because this happened. We're just like, I'm just sad. I'm just angry. Don't ask me why. Fuck off. I'm just sad. Let me be sad. It's like, no, there's a reason. We're just not able to do that cause and effect as well. So if you are feeling sad or down, it's almost always a reason. And just like a short mental exercise of the health, wealth, love, figuring out what am I not keeping in check here, usually allows you to address whatever it is that's making you feel unbalanced.
I like that. I like how, as well, the more sort of holistic side of dating brings personal development into the mix. Because that's one thing when I read Models by Mark Manson. It almost felt like a personal development book that was geared towards dating, but not exclusively about that. Because it was essentially, the premise is like the most unattractive thing to a woman would be like a man who is excessively needy. Yeah. And in the book, he talks about how that's a bigger problem. That's like indicative of something in your life that's lacking. And let's say you do, start chatting to a woman. Let's say you do sleep with her, etc. But she's going to notice. You can't hide that for very long. She'll sniff that out before you know it.
You can't hide it.
And
I mean, she's literally been designed. She's been designed to see through it, right? I heard another podcast. Jordan Peterson was talking about this recently, and the way he described it was like the survival of her children depend on her seeing through that, right? The survival of her children depend on her knowing when a guy is putting it on, right? It literally is that, right? If she isn't able to calculate that you're putting on a front, and she makes the mistake of choosing this man as her partner, who is deeply insecure under the surface, and he's acting in that moment. If she can't see through that, then she literally will not pass her genes on, because those children will fail. They'll be riddled with the same problems. The relationships likely to fall apart, and so she's been designed to see that straight away.
That's actually a really good point. Yeah, I've not thought of it like that. Yeah, she ends up falling for a guy, chooses a mate. If we're talking like, if we go back to our ancestors and stuff, chooses a mate, has kids. Turns out this guy is not a good hunter or a gatherer as he bragged about.
No.
And he wasn't as confident, and he wasn't as higher up the social status pecking order kind of thing. And then we find that out later.
Yeah.
And it's like, holy shit, my kids aren't getting fed. So it's like it's true actually. It's like a real issue.
It's like, it's just from a gene's eye perspective. If you take the perspective of our genes, there is just no way that a woman who can't calculate this would have passed on her genes, right? So there will be people in the world, women who aren't able to calculate it, but they are the genetic anomalies, right? They rather than the normal.
Yeah. So that's I just love that spectrum, because I almost certainly, like yourself, I read The Game, the book, this very famous book called The Game.
Yes.
The Secret World of Pickup Artists. And I was late to the party on that one. I read that only like a few years ago. But it did strike me as interesting, because I read the book and I was totally like, oh my God, this is working. This is amazing. How can I do this? But then toward the second half of the book, the wheels start to come off, in the sense that there's this guy, Mystery, who is just sleeping with all these women, and he has such control in this area, and is just revered by just all these guys as being the guy to go to for this. But then he started to have real issues in relationships. He ended up in a psych ward, and when a girl cheated on him, he just flipped out. And it just turns out he was actually a really emotionally unhealthy individual who craved power and affection and attention to such a degree. So I think it'd be healthy for guys to kind of understand understand that spectrum. You know, if they're choosing a dating coach, or they want to sort this area of their life out, like, what are they being taught, and whereabouts on the spectrum does it fit? You know,
for sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, the way that I look at this, and this wasn't something that was self-evident to me at the start, but having done this work now for 7+ years, like, for me, it's just like this dating coaching. It's still it's still young, I guess. It's still evolving, right? But you know, if you're looking to start a business, right, and you went to a business coach and he was like, right, so what's your goal for your business? And he's like, no, I don't know, I just want to be a better businessman. I would be like, I can't work with you, right? I can't work with you. But traditionally, dating coaches, people would come to them and say, I want to get better with women. And they're like, okay, well, let's get you better with women, right? And that's the perspective they've taken. And I mean, it took way longer than it should have done for me to realize that if I'm going to work with a client, the first thing we need to figure out is, what are your goals, right? What are your goals? Like, what do you want to see in your life? In the same way that the business is like, well, I want to make a 100K business. I want to make a business here, and I want to have employees. And I want to serve these people. It's like, you create a visualization of what you want to see in your life, and then you pursue it, right? And you have obstacles and you overcome them because you know where you're going, right? And it's exactly the same with dating coaching and personal training. It's like, if a client comes to me and says, I want to get better with women, I'm like, trust me, you don't, because better is a moving target. As soon as you start getting better, better's farther away. And better compared with what? It's only compared with other people, right? I see that guy with that girlfriend, and he's better than me, and I want to get that. It's like, no, this is wrong. What do you want to see in your life, right? Do you want a girlfriend? Do you want to be dating 1 or 2 girls? Do you want to have 2 girlfriends? Like, no judgment, right? But whatever you want, and it doesn't have to be this, you don't have to go inside and start searching, but on the surface, what do you want? How would it look cool if your life was, how would your life look cool to you, right? Maybe you go on 2 dates a week for the moment with different girls, right? And again, some people look at that and think there's a problem with that. I just think that whatever people think they want is what they need right now, right? I believe that if you think that's what you want right now, you don't have to look deeper and say, but why do you want to date 2 women? Why don't you want to settle down with a girlfriend and have a wife and a family? It's like, no, they need to go through this, right? Even if that's what they want eventually. If someone thinks they want to be dating and sleeping with a lot of women now, that's their mistake to make, if it is a mistake, or that's their journey to go on to find out that that's no longer what they want, or maybe was never really what they wanted. But you have to let people go on that journey first, right?
Got you. And you feel like it's part of just their personal journey.
Yeah, that's their journey, right? It's like the parents saying, like, just constantly saying, like, Timmy, don't run, because you'll fall over. No, Timmy needs to fall over to know that he shouldn't run. Like, if parents just say don't run, he's always just going to be scared to run. Like, he won't know that terrain, right? So you've got to let people go on their journeys, but that doesn't take away from the importance of goals. Just as with business, the goal might change in the future, but you've got to start going towards one goal for you to be able to adapt that direction and change that direction and modify your goals, right? You've got to start moving. If you stay still and you get stuck on figuring out what your goal is, then you're never going anywhere. So the first thing we do is we go through, what are your goals? What do you want to see in your life, right? And not just dating, but social as well, right? So you want to go on 2 dates a week, right? What kind of woman do you want to go on a date with, right? What would she look like? What would that be like, right? Because now what we can do is we can say, right, well, that type of woman, right, who likes these sorts of things, right, well, where are we going to find her, right? If she's an artsy woman, maybe we're going to go to art galleries. Maybe we're going to go to different areas. Maybe we're going to change the way that we address this. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, what do you want your social life to look like? And people are like, oh, I just want to have like cool friends who go out with. No, it's like, no. Like, what type of friends, right? You can be specific about this because it really does matter. I mean, this is the manifestation of what your life actually turns out to be like. So we go into some details with goals, and then we literally just set a plan of action on how to achieve them, right? Where are you going to need to go? Which time are you able to set aside per week? How many people are you going to be able to talk to in that time? And of those people you talk to, what can we predict might be the outcome of those? And then week on week, we can modify and adapt and change the process that we're using. Maybe you need to approach more people. Maybe you need to change your locations and where you're going. But you can actually do this, right? And accountability is a big part of it. Motivation's a big part of it, you know? Just being able to bat your ideas off someone else and have that person that you come to each week to keep you on track and who's invested in your improvement.
Yeah. So on that note, in your experience, when you talk about goals, in your experience, what kind of goals are men, what do they mostly desire? What commonly do they come to you for? Because I'm trying to get a feel for what are men searching for in this area on a broader scale.
So this is interesting.
Yeah, because we're trying to, we'd like to, because we obviously on at ikario, we talk a lot about social media and how the algorithms are kind of shaping our behavior through social media, with the attention economy and the rest of it. So we're trying to get a bit of a perspective as to how are things changing on a slightly more broader perspective. And one thing I thought would be really cool just to ask you, like, what do you find that guys want? What do you find they mostly struggle with? What problems do they face? What problems do they think they have, but they actually don't? They have another problem maybe. So I just wondered, we could start there. So what's their goal? Like, what do they come to you for, generally speaking, initially?
Well, I think it speaks volumes that when I said at the start that guys say they want to be better with women, right? And I think that one of the problems that guys face, and actually tying in perfectly with what you're talking about, I really do think it's mostly down to social media, is that they get stuck in this frame of wanting to be better than they are, but not from the right place. It's coming from a sort of place of weakness, of constant comparison to other people, and sort of this like suffocated pride of like why don't I have what I want? I should be able to have what I want. And a lot of guys come from this perspective, and then they so when they say I want to be better with women, it's almost this kind of egoic drive, right? To feel like worthy of women, right? To feel worthy of beautiful women. And so I have this kind of battle with my clients at the start where they're saying, but why shouldn't I want to be better with women? I'm like, look, that isn't really the problem. The problem is that if you're so focused on like being better with girls, you're just always chasing your tail. You never get to that stage where you think you're better, and you're always pursuing it for the wrong reasons. And really, the women that matter, they don't feel like you're really invested in them. You're just invested in your own kind of vain pursuit of worthiness. And so I have this sort of battle with them where a lot of the guys that come to me are invested in personal development as well, right? It's very interlapping. And I say, look, you just got to drop the personal development side during this process. And we're going to focus on outcomes. We're going to focus on the manifestations of the process in your life. I know there's a lot of talk in self-help about process orientation versus results orientation. But in this case, I think that if guys are focused on like, getting better with girls, then they go out and they do an approach and the girl was friendly, right, and nice. And they're like, yes, I'm getting better. I'm good now. I'm getting better. And the next one, it goes badly. And they're like, oh, I'm having a bad day. I'm having a bad day. And they get exhausted by these stories that they're telling themselves about doing well or doing badly. Whereas the guys that come to me, the clients that come to me and say, Sam, I'm looking to get married. I want to get married to this type of woman. They know what they want directly. They get rejected by a girl and they're like, okay, she wasn't the one. What about this one? Okay, she wasn't the one. What about this one? And they get into it because they don't care. They're not getting wrapped up in the stories in the moment about why this girl didn't like them and what they did wrong, right? Now, there's some value to active learning, to saying, right, okay, this girl responded badly when I said that. Maybe in this culture that there's something that I did to offend them, right? I mean, I was talking to a girl the other day and I was like, oh, cool. So where do you live? And she was like, I was like, sorry? She was like, you can't ask that. I was like, I didn't ask for your postcode.
I didn't ask for your address, but your apartment number.
Yeah, exactly. So when I come out of that interaction, I think, right, I'm fairly certain that's not an inappropriate thing to say. But if a pattern emerges, if I say that again and another girl responds like that, then I've learned something about Lisbon, right? I've learned something about at least the culture here. So there's some value to active learning. But for men to constantly be like looking back at the interaction and trying to find reason in why this didn't go well or this did is complete. It's a complete dead end because we can't control the mood she's in. And there's been research done on this, right? Where women were given in an experiment, 50% of the test subjects were given a task to do, right? They were told, you have to deliver this parcel to this house. And the other 50% weren't given a task, right? And as they left the building, a guy would come and approach them. I may be misquoting this a little bit, but this is the general gist. A guy would come and approach them, right? Now, the women that had the task to do were way less receptive to being approached than the women who had nothing to do. They were just told to go outside for 10 minutes, right? Mm-hmm. So what that evidence showed is that if we've been given something that seems to us important to do, we are way less likely to respond to a cold approach, whether that's someone selling something or someone asking for our number or whatever in the street. So when we as men take the whole burden upon ourselves as like, I can control everything in my life, and if that interaction didn't go well, it's because I'm doing it wrong and I'm in the wrong place. It's like, no, there's a load of this stuff that you can't control. And it's impossible for you to untangle that which you can and that which you can't. It's a dance, right? She needs to be in the right headspace. You need to be in the right headspace. Like her dog might have died this morning, or she might have won the lottery, or she might have broken up with her boyfriend, or they might have just had a fight. And each one of these situations, which you have no control over, is going to entirely shape the way that she responds to you. So what's the solution? Well, the solution is to say whether this goes seemingly really well or seemingly really badly, I am going to completely drop it after it happens, right? If I get a phone number or contact details, then I can come back to them later. But for now, during this process, I'm going to drop it all. I'm going to focus only on my lived experience right now, walking around, standing up straight, focusing on the faces of the individuals with whom you're coming into contact. And every time you have an interaction, whether it went well or bad, you drop it completely and come back to this moment. And what I learned for myself in following this process is that before, when I would get fatigued, I would find that if I had one good interaction, 10 minutes later, I wanted to go home feeling exhausted. And I was exhausting myself going over it in my head. When shall I message her? How was the interaction? What did she say her favorite thing to do was? You exhaust yourself with the emotional energy, feeling good and bad and annoyed and happy and getting wrapped up in these stories about nonsense. And really, you should just be focusing on right now, next, drop it, move on to the next one.
Yeah, I understand. So you say, so when guys say, I want to get better with women, that's mostly what guys ask in a kind of a vague sort of way, you've noticed.
Yeah.
I want to get better with women. And you mentioned that obviously if someone comes to you and says they have like a concrete goal, such as I want to get married to this kind of woman, it tends to stand them in better stead than just saying a vague, I want to get better with women. Because you're saying that the guys that often say, just want to get better with women. You're saying it's coming from a place of coming from not quite the not a good motivational foundation, right? They're coming from a place of maybe insecurity.
I think at least they're coming from a place of lack of clarity.
Right.
Because to be better with women, the only way that thought can exist in your mind is as a vague picture of a guy that is cooler than he is now in some way, right?
Yeah.
It's not concrete. It's not anything that you can actually work towards. It's just this vague image of the love child of you and Hugh Hefner, right? And these guys have this like, just to be better. And it's just this vague, scrappy image in their mind. And usually it comes when I've got slightly older clients, maybe like mid-late 30s, and they've sorted out their financial side and their health side, and, focusing on those two things has taken them out of the dating market to some extent, and they've sort of neglected that area a bit, but they're clear about what they want. And I find myself doing a very different job when I'm with them. I'm basically everything is so simple. So we just go out and they approach, and I watch and give them feedback if they need it. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And we just continue like this until it works. And it does work. And on the other hand, when I'm working with someone who was like I was when I first got into this, a bit emotionally broken and confused and, not quite understanding what I want, or just knowing that I'm not where I want to be at all. When I have someone like that, I'm doing a very different job. I'm more of a psychologist. I'm trying to bring clarity to their mind about what they actually want and get them to drop any sense of, trying to help them to drop the ego by focusing on the manifestations, right? And maybe even focusing on the other areas of their life, right? On their health and their ability at least to have a manageable financial situation. Yeah. And so it's kind of, it's a spectrum of the work that I actually do, depending on where the client's at.
Yeah. So when it comes to guys wanting to just generally get better with women, something that I've found quite strange, and I want to get your thoughts on this, is that dating and relationships, it's very much, there's a lot of skill involved, and there's a lot of it's learnable, it's teachable. You can understand how how the dynamics work, social skills, calibrating yourself in a social environment. There's so many things that you can learn in this area. But I wonder if, and this is what I wanted to get your thoughts on. When men struggle with this, part of it is because they were just never taught this. And what's your thought? What are your thoughts on that? Does that strike you as being possibly a reason for this, or is it something that men, generally speaking, should naturally learn through just experience rather than being explicitly taught it?
It's a really difficult question, and I don't think there's an obvious black and white answer to it. Right? I think that it would be very strange if we were teaching young children how to chase, little boys, how to chase little girls around the park, right? I mean, so the first question is, at what age would it even seem vaguely appropriate to teach boys how to approach girls? And then on whom does the responsibility fall if they misinterpret that information and get it wrong, right? Being impressionable and a little bit confused. So I think that is more of a parental issue than an education issue, personally. I think that mothers and fathers should be incentivized to make sure that their child is going to have good chances with both their sex, but the opposite sex as well, right? Yeah. And I don't know why it is that fathers particularly, well, I can only really speak for the UK, but I imagine in America and across the world as well, they don't tell their children anything about girls, right? They don't have that sit-down chat of look, how's it going, right? Do you like any of the girls at your school? And they don't really pry into that area, and I think they should. And I certainly would like to, when the time is right with my son, to go there and to figure it out and to make sure that he's on a good footing to be socially successful, because it is, as you said, it is something you can learn.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, there is extremely good evolutionary reasons why men aren't good at this as well, right? Because this is fundamentally reproduction. And as we said, from the gene's eye view, 100,000 years ago, if you were in a tribe of between 100 and 150 people, and you went up to a woman who was with an alpha male, part of the harem of an alpha male, who was a strong alpha male, I mean, that could subject you to death or worse, abandonment from the tribe, which is equal to death anyway. And so it wouldn't have served your genes. You wouldn't have been produced if your ancestors hadn't had the fear, right? Because you would have been killed or abandoned by the tribe. So we've evolved to be scared of approaching women because our society has moved much faster than our evolutionary biology, right? We still have the hardware of hunter-gatherers from 100,000 years ago, and now we live in a high-speed society. So we're still stuck in the tribal mentality. We have all of the tribal hardware, right? Girls are still attracted to guys with, big muscles. We don't really need big muscles anymore, right? But in tribal times, we did. Right now, it might be people live longer if they're very, very, very skinny, very slim, with different proportions. But of course, our evolutionary biology hasn't caught up yet with our society. And
yeah, that's a good point.
And so there's very, very good reasons to tie this all up. There's very good reasons why men feel scared to talk to women. Not only that, but also the few men that aren't scared to talk to women, it makes it very easy for a woman to ascertain that man is probably going to be a good partner, right? If 95% of guys are terrified of talking to girls, and yet this guy seems not to care, what does that tell her about his potential value as a sexual partner? Right? So there's a few different things going on. Yes, I think there is something at the social level, which I think should fall into the domain of parental guidance rather than the school system, because I don't know how they would burden the responsibility for it. But I think there's a lot of evolutionary causation.
I really like what you said there, because yeah, it's true. Education wise, where would that fit in? And ideally the role of the father, right? Ideally, to just sort of have an interest in the kid's life about that, and just like, hey, how are things going? Who do you like? That sort of thing. I never had that. No. Did you?
No. No, and it's not, and I'm not, and I don't in any way mean to imply that, it was the problem of the father as well. Like, I don't really believe it is. I don't know if there's any point where a father says like, oh, I could talk to him about that, but I'm not going to, out of cynicism or laziness. I just don't think it crosses their mind, right? I don't think it's within their mental theater to come up with the idea that they should talk to their children about it, right? So yeah. I don't think it's a problem of laziness or cynicism. I think it's simply not an available option to them. It just doesn't appear in their mind as something that they could choose to do. And I don't know if that's changing now. I don't know what will be the result of our generation of fathers, but certainly it's something that I've thought about, and it's something that's it's important. It's important to me that because I think it is really important just to know that like you're not gonna lose in the long run for giving it a go. Is just massive, right? Like, when I was at school and like young, like 11, 12, I had a really fixed idea that these guys were capable of getting those girls because he plays rugby and he's, in the sports team and this and that. And these guys are capable of this. And this is just it. This is just done.
It's totally black and white.
This is done. This is it. What I didn't know is that one of the guys that was with that girl, like he'd just gone up and said something to her, right? And no one else had. And so he was there, right? And then we would sort of rationalize why and be like, I could never do that. But just to kind of give it a go and to give them a sense of perspective, like whatever happens now just isn't going to matter in 2-3 years' time. And so you've got to figure it out. Just go for it, because in the long run, it's going to benefit you to make these mistakes now, to have fun, to go for what you want, right? And obviously that advice, I suppose, would become more nuanced as the child grows up, right? But no, I think it's a combination. I think there's some very good evolutionary reason, and I think there's a societal lacking there as well.
Yeah. Well, this raises another interesting point. So in my life, I have experienced a lot of benefit from mentorship from men. Like I've been part of a men's emotional support group for it's getting on about 2.5 years now. And that completely changed my life, because it was after a really difficult breakup myself. And rather than just go for a rebound like I did before that, instead I was like, this relationship crumbled for exactly the same reason. I've got to do something different. So I started to join these men's groups on Facebook and wrote posts about what I was going through. And the overwhelming warmth and support and wisdom I got, I was like, holy shit, this is crazy. And from guys who were like way older than me, like in their 50s, one guy's in his 60s, and he's just giving like real hard-earned life wisdom. And the mentorship aspect is something that I didn't realize that I was totally lacking before that.
Yeah.
So when you bring up the parental aspect of things, I agree with you. It's not like an educational thing. What the hell are the schools going to do? Like, you can have pick-up day game for like your third lesson of the day for an hour. Like, how's that going to work? But the role of, ideally, the father would teach this, and that brings up the point of mentorship. And you mentioned earlier in your journey to become a dating coach, you saw desirable behavior modeled, and you wanted to you pursued that. You saw something to go for in that area, which is essentially what a mentor can be. Like, you just see role models, basically. So yeah, I just wanted to make a note of that.
I think that's interesting, man. Like, I think there's probably a couple of things there. I agree about mentorship. I think it's difficult to find. I think it's actually still difficult to find mentors, to be honest. I mean, I think like you've got obvious people. Jordan Peterson's a good example of like the universal man's mentor. He just seems like he was just built to be helping guys who don't have mentors, and just he kind of one size fits all. But I think it's quite, it can be quite a strange process when you're growing up and you don't have many mentors in your life, and you find them online, and you sort of start to see through the cracks, and cracks appear, and you just keep seeing your mentors dissolving in front of your eyes as not the person that you thought they were. And I think I certainly experienced that with people in this industry, for me, who put on this blasé and this front, and then I realized that they were just lonely still, and not, I don't mean to chastise them for being lonely and not showing it, but you just realize that what you had imagined they were isn't at all what they are. And that can be quite like, oh my God, if that mentor's not real, none of them are then, right? And so it's kind of difficult, man. It's kind of hard to do that. I think probably maybe you do acknowledge it, but what you didn't bring up about the mentorship thing was actually just the pure value of sharing your experiences alone. It's not just that you were saying it to people who knew a lot about it, but I think actually a big part of why that probably supported you was the fact that you were sharing it, right? It was something much more personal, that you were sharing information that was difficult for you to process, and people were listening to you.
Yeah.
Whether or not they know the answer or the solution, I think there's value in that model of support, where you're saying things to a group of people who are willing to listen. So I think there's probably two parts to that. I mean, great if there were people there who can give you real advice and who can actually really relate to the situation and offer you feedback. But I think there's value just in the act of sharing that stuff as well, because, the first way to like overcome an insecurity or a problem or emotional pain is to bring that pain out, right? It's to surface that pain, to expose that pain, and then you can deal with it. But if it's always stuck in the back somewhere and you can't drudge it out, right? You can't fish it out, then there's no way you're going to address it.
Yeah, that's a good point. It may well have been that,
or some combination of the two, right?
Probably so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to switch gears a little bit.
Let's go.
Let's talk about porn.
Yeah.
Not just porn, but also I wanted to get your perspective on how dating apps. First of all, I wanted to get your opinion on dating apps, and I also wanted to get your opinion on what you've observed, because you've been doing this for 7 years, right? So 7 years is, especially when you consider how fast things are changing now, 7 years is certainly a decent enough time to sort of see how things are affected by like technology and whatnot. So how have you noticed any difference that dating apps have made in the dating world and also in how men show up in the dating world?
Well, dating apps have existed long before I started this, but they came in probably 2000. I think maybe it was 2015. I think it was 2012 when Tinder started. It was 2012, in my experience anyway, when Tinder, people started downloading it unironically, right? Before then, it was like, oh my God, look at all these losers. And then something switched, and I remember like going into my university halls and there was a bunch of girls sitting around on Tinder actually swiping and using it. I was like, this is weird. And so I think that happened in 2012, right? So I started this around 2015, 2016. I mean, look, I don't want to say that there's like one moment where like everything changed. I just think that for at least as long as I've been in this industry, things have, screen time has increased, and Instagram and Tinder have become increasingly used and increasingly attractive. And I think it is for the worse, for the net worse. I believe that it is damaging and problematic to be using Tinder where there are other options. And in almost all cases there are. So my take on it is the following. It's like Tinder is, you don't get free meals in this world. You don't get free meals. Nothing comes for free, right? The Tinder, the idea is that you get something for free. It's like, I'm never going to meet the girl, but maybe I'll find that beautiful girl on Tinder. It's like, you're not going to, because you're here, you're on Tinder. And what are you saying by being on Tinder? You're saying that I don't have these girls in real life. I don't have the ability to meet women in real life. So here I am. It's the last chance is this application. I'm outsourcing my love life, my dating life, to a corporation. I'm giving them all my information. I'm smiling and looking as good as I can in my pictures, and I'm saying the best things about me. And maybe then she'll come along. And what did we talk about before? Women have evolved primarily to know which man does and which man does not have the value that will make him a worthy partner. And the first sign that you're not a worthy partner for probably the types of women that you really want is that you're on this dating app telling her that you've got no other way, right? So look, that is quite a black and white thing, right? There are many shades of grey here, but I want to just give the overarching theme as I see it, and why it pisses me off, right? Why Tinder as an idea, I just find it so disappointing, isn't it? It's just such a disappointing way for life to go. Now, look, as it relates to porn, so that's the first thing, right? Women know, right? And from a man's perspective, you can even do this equation, right? If a really seemingly attractive girl on Tinder suddenly matches with you, why has this happened? Your first thing should be like, wait, this isn't normal, right? Why is this girl not got guys? She must have guys coming up to her in real life, right? She's a very attractive, seemingly cool girl. Why is she matching with me on Tinder? Why? So the first thing that I would think if a really beautiful girl matched me on Tinder is red flag. What's gone wrong in her social life that she doesn't have options with cool guys, and she's resorted to this app, right? Again, this is a little bit maybe judgmental sounding, but I'm just trying to give the black and white view first. Now, the next thing is that, as you talked about porn, is that Tinder for me is just soft porn, right? Increasingly, I mean, it's just bikini pics, right? If a girl doesn't have a full body pic, most guys are going to think that something's up, right? Something's wrong there. Most of them have a bikini pic or an underwear pic or something like that. It's getting increasingly sexual. And we know what the human brain is like, right? Women's brains are stimulated by words and emotion. Men's brains are stimulated by the visual. So when we see half naked girl, we get slightly aroused. When we swipe 50 times in 5 minutes or more, then each time we see that, our brain is getting that dopamine hit of what's next, which takes away our freedom and autonomy for decision making, right? It literally trains you out of decision making, right? So you don't have the capacity to make good decisions and say, no, I'm not gonna masturbate now. So that's being taken, and you're getting more and more aroused. So I mean, I think that Tinder is just like, if you've got nothing to do in the day and you can't get yourself outside the house, you go on Tinder for 30 minutes. I reckon 50% of guys are gonna have a wank after 30 minutes of Tinder in the middle of the day, right? And then what? And then you have that self-loathing inside. It's like, oh God, you're disgusting. Like, you sat here for 30 minutes swiping through Tinder, and then this is how it ended, and now you're impotent. Now you can't even go out now, and you've got no sex drive and no will to do anything. It's really depressing, man. I think it's really depressing. So I advise all my clients, like, get off Tinder. The one function that I do think Tinder provides is, for example, if you're traveling to a new country, you can set up Tinder Gold, which is, I'm not getting sponsored by them, by the way. You can set up Tinder Gold and put your location to that country, right? So if I go to Colombia, I could say, like, put my pin in Colombia, and then I could swipe through beforehand and try and build a little network on the ground beforehand, right? Maybe if there's 5 girls that I move then onto WhatsApp, and potentially got their numbers on WhatsApp or on Instagram or something, which I don't use at the moment, but could have value there. And then you arrange to meet them over WhatsApp, and then you delete the app when you get to Colombia, right? But at least now you've got some people that can show you around the city and maybe introduce you to some other people. Maybe you've got some sort of way in to the country. And even then, I don't necessarily recommend that. It's passable, right? And it could be valuable in some cases. Other than that, I think for anyone that has 1-2 hours each day where they could be focusing on their social life, they should be, and they should not be using Tinder. Go outside your door. Go out, literally stand outside your front door. You're more likely to get an attractive girl walking past your front door than on Tinder. It's just not going to happen for 90% of, 95 to 99% of guys.
Yeah, I feel you. So you'd recommend that people do not use Tinder, and certainly not as a substitute for a social life, at all. Does that same... So actually, before I move on to that, I want to ask you, so this rampant use of Tinder, how is it affecting men, would you say, on a broader scale?
Well, because of what we've just talked about, I think that it's making men more impotent. I think that on Tinder, the algorithms work in such a way that you see a lot of attractive women, and those are never the ones that you meet up with, right? I mean, if you ask the average guy, how many beautiful women, in your opinion, cool, beautiful women have you met on Tinder? The answer is going to be astoundingly low. And that's because for men, there seems to be an accurate visualization of attractive women. So if you ask a man, how attractive is this girl on Tinder, it will generally tend to correspond with what most people believe. But for women, 80% of men on Tinder in trials that they've done are rated a 4 or below. 80% of men get a rating of a 4 or below for women on Tinder, right? So the whole thing is proportionally skewed. And I think that, rejection in real life, I think, is so valuable, right? To go out and ask for a job and get rejected, to go out and talk to a girl in the day and her to not want you, and for you to be able to overcome that and smile inside yourself that you did the right thing despite that response. You did what's right. It's incredibly valuable. But the constant rejection of endless swiping and endless seeing a beautiful girl and it never happening for you, I think is just demoralizing and depressing. And I think the urge to go on Tinder is never unaccompanied by some level of self-loathing. And I think the results of having gone on Tinder and whatever might come to pass at the end of a 30-minute stint is never unaccompanied by some level of self-loathing as well. So I think that Tinder is slowly causing men to hate themselves in the moment. But as we know from habits, you essentially become your habits, right? Your whole personality is based around what you repeatedly do. If you find yourself 8 moments throughout the day falling into this moment of self-loathing, you will start to be a person that self-loathes. You will start to identify with self-loathing. And so I think that's the result of not only Tinder, but Instagram as well, where most people's home front page is just filled with beautiful dancing women who are completely unattainable and who are just edging them towards the precipice of self-pleasuring.
Jerking it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting you mentioned about rejection, and I like what you said, that rejection is it's useful. I would argue that it's essential.
Yeah.
To getting what it is that you want, you're going to be rejected, whether it is for business opportunities or dating opportunities. You're going to get rejected way more often than you're going to get accepted.
Yeah, just to add in that, so not only is it essential, but it also makes the thing worth having, right? it like literally, if you went for that job and the first one you went to was just like, yep, you're hired, you'd be like, huh?
And
That
any
was
other
too
subsequent
easy.
job after that, it's like, you're hired. Yeah, you're
that
hired.
was too
Like,
easy. In the same way as if you went out and the first girl you met in the street, she loved you and wanted to be with you, and then the second did the same, you'd just be like,
there'd be nothing to contend with.
The whole thing for me, this is the most important thing about cold approach, isn't the results that it brings you. It's that as men today in the 21st century, we have lost conquest, right? Thank God we don't have a world war to fight through. Thank God we're not going in Viking longboats and raping and murdering a civilization and then celebrating. Right? Great, we've gained in ethical or moral judgment. However, there was something in that, right? There's something in war that is romantic. There's something essential there, right? And what I believe it is it's conquest. It's seeing a challenge and knowing that you've overcome it. Right? And we have so few opportunities for that today. Men have so few opportunities to see themselves conquering something. And I'm not referring to conquering the woman necessarily. I'm referring to conquering the situation. And for me, cold approach is almost potentially the most direct way that a man can get that sense of conquest. And I don't mean conquest in the obvious way that you'd relate it, as in like you're having sex with her. I mean the situation of doing something that tears you up inside. You see a beautiful girl, you get all of these reasons why you're not going to talk to her, all of this negative self-talk. You recognize it, you push it to the side, you go and do it, she smiles at you, you have a good conversation. Maybe you arrange to go for a drink, right? And if you do, right, and if you have a great experience with her, like what is more of an obvious way of experiencing the sense, the romance, and the beauty of conquest? Probably what the Vikings felt when they went and,
they sailed off in a longboat and showed up on the shores of the UK. Like, holy shit, we actually made it.
I know, and you can't help but see what was beautiful about that, right? Even though it was also murderous and horrible, you can't deny that there's something romantic and beautiful hidden in there as well.
It's the overcoming of
the obstacle,
the
challenge,
and
the romance,
and the fear
war.
of. In the case of the Vikings, because I love that story, it was like the fear of the complete unknown. It's like they're sailing off in that direction and have absolutely no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah,
and it's the same kind of thing. It's like you approach a beautiful woman, you do not know how this is going to go down.
Sure.
And the thing about Tinder and rejection, I wonder. I might even make the argument that a man who is just swiping on Tinder, he is trying to get the thing he wants while trying to avoid the real rejection. Because, like, if you're swiping, there isn't that woman in front of you who's looking at you and is like, yeah. Like, it's a softened version of a rejection that they might want to be trying to avoid. But through softening the possibility of rejection, or the pain of the rejection if it was there, they make themselves essentially weaker, like less courageous and less, willing to confront a challenge in a way.
100%, and more socially anxious, right? The longer you spend looking at pictures of attractive women on your phone, the less confident you're going to be in front of one in real life, right? I often find myself around clients or friends, and when I find myself like on a night out, and my friends or my clients start saying, "Oh man, you've got to look at this girl. Like, look at this girl who I talked to the other day." That's a point where I'm like, okay, something needs to change here, because what will happen, and I've seen it 1,000 times, is guys will start like comparing photos and talking about women, the sort of locker room banter.
Yeah.
And then a beautiful girl will walk past and no one will go and talk to her. They'll all pretend they didn't see her. Right? And this actually happens.
Yeah.
And it's because they've put themselves in this ego state of like, look what I did before, right? You put yourself in this I'm the guy type thing. And then when you see a girl in that state, you can't fathom tearing that facade down now and having her just say, go away.
Yeah.
And walking away. Like how can that be acceptable to this state that you've worked yourself into, looking at pictures of girls that you've dated or talked to?
Yeah.
And so I just comes to the drop it. It comes back to what we talked about before about just drop it, right? Yes, that happened in the past. You don't need to prove that to anyone. Drop it. Mm-hmm. Drop it. Like you're gonna suck at some point in the future. Sometimes you're gonna feel good. Sometimes you're gonna suck again. You're gonna suck. And so we just have to completely accept that and not get worked up about whether we're good or bad or anything like that. Some women, like some men, some of the time. That's all you need to know. And it's your job to stay aware of the opportunities that exist and go there without any expectation or preconditioned state that you're expecting things to go a certain way.
Some women like some men some of the time. Yeah. That's I think that feels like a healthy expectation or a healthy sort of affirmation to use.
Yeah, that one's good for me because you can just say it to anyone that's saying like, oh, but like, what do I need to do? Like, why did it go badly? Some women like some men some of the time.
Yeah, it's like you could have been the smoothest. That could have gone the smoothest on your end. Yeah. And you'll still get some woman that's just not interested.
Yeah, and it might be that an hour later, after she'd seen Kathy and Kathy's dog and had a gin and tonic, she'd be fine, right? You don't know, and so the old serenity prayer to God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference between them. That rings so true here. It's like you don't know what here is in your control and what is not, so drop it all. Right? Accept that which you cannot change that which you can, and know the difference between them.
Boom. There's the last little thing I wanted to talk about was just to touch on the porn question.
You really got something on your mind today, haven't you?
Yeah, it's dirty. Filthy minded.
Dirty mind.
That's all I've been thinking about the entire time.
I wonder where your
when I'm going to pop that porn question. They've been here, all right? Jesus. But yeah, so one of the things that's emerged over the past few years is sort of this digitalization of relationships and sex. And porn has, like, I think especially with the onset of when coronavirus came up, porn use went, I think it went up by like something like 40%, especially in France, for example. So porn is just more and more available now. And with it, these like OnlyFans and sort of these digitalized relationships that men have. It's like they pay a woman online, they don't like donate to her, and she just sort of like gives them a shout out or sends them a naked photo and has this like online relationship with him. And it's like a trade-in of an actual human relationship. But anyway, the question I've got is around porn. So in your experience, when guys come to you, do they often have a problem with this? And is this part of the issue, or like when it comes to porn, is there some correlation? Like if they struggle with the dating life that much, they're watching porn a lot, and is that a problem? Like, I just wanted to know what on porn. What are your thoughts?
That's a really
generally?
Good question. I think that it's a really good question, man.
And is that
I have actually had clients who are like, I've got to be completely honest with you, on like various occasions where I've got just full on porn addicts our clients. So there definitely is some correlation. I imagine that a lot of clients who don't bring that up because maybe there's a line at which they don't want to talk about stuff. Maybe if they don't know how relevant it is, and it's extremely embarrassing for them in some way.
Yeah.
But I probably think there's definitely a correlation, right?
Yeah.
In some cases. I just think in porn's a thing of like moderation, right? Like I wouldn't judge someone for like watching porn at all. I think most people in a year watch porn, right? So I don't think there's anything innately wrong with it. I just think that if you're constantly watching porn, then you're just not going to have any sex drive, and you kind of like, you feel like, I don't know, I think it comes to the self-loathing, right? I think that guys who watch porn all the time, they just constantly feel in some way like the woman on the screen has like, has like done one over them. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think there's almost this submissive thing of being the voyeur, and like she has the power to make to get you to do, you know, to get you to do that act. Like, I think that there's some sort of, you know, I think that there's some sort of ingraining of a submissive mindset into guys when they frequently watch porn without a girl with them, right? Because that can be quite fun. And that are healthy, I think, as well.
Yeah. Like it's just, that's like, at that point, it's a healthy exploration of your sexuality.
For sure. I think the problem is this, and it's not just with porn, but it's like when you feel unwatched, when you feel like you're in your safe zone, right? You can watch this and know that no one's seeing you do it, right? You're completely alone and there's nothing out of your zone. When that porn finishes or that video finishes, now you've got to get your mind into a state that is suddenly willing to allow people to look at you, right? I think that's the issue, right? That moment that you go into something like porn, or, you know, and you feel so voyeuristic and unobserved, like when you suddenly wake up from that dream afterwards, and then it's like, oh, I need to go to the shops, you're going to be more like, then people are going to see me, right? And I've been unseen, I've been behind the curtain. And I think it's difficult for guys to like have the patience and the presence of mind to then put themselves in a position where they can be viewed by others and not be the viewer. Right? It's like breaking out of the voyeuristic mode, which you have to do to be social, right? We, as you know, to be social starts with one action. It's like, if you're feeling antisocial, walk outside your house, right? If you get a bit better after you walk outside, look at someone in the face, right? Next, smile at someone, right? If that's all you can do, right? You see a pretty girl, just look at her as she walks past, right? The next one, maybe you can take 3 steps towards her. It really does come to the granular level of whatever you can do to put yourself in a slightly better position is better. So if you're a chronic masturbator, no porn is better than porn. Girl on girl is better than guy on girl. I literally mean it like that. It's like, if you're going to do it, like girl on girl at least isn't like the full thing. You know, so I just think that, because I know that porn addiction is real, like people really do have to get stuck there. It's like, just try and do whatever you can to reel it back. Those little steps may seem like little steps, but in reality, they're the ones that are going to lead to the complete absolution of this addiction. So just whatever you can do to peel it back. And I think also in your mind, sometimes it's like, a guy might have a thought that's like, oh, I'm going to watch porn. I want to watch porn. At that moment, he should just remember what it feels like afterwards, right? That slight self-loathing. He should be like, no, done. Forget it, drop the thought. Because sometimes the mind doesn't understand no. So if you say, I will not watch porn, then your mind doesn't hear the not, right? Your mind doesn't process the negative in the same way. It just hears porn. Yeah. And you're basically doing the marketing for porn. Just like if McDonald's say, McDonald's is unhealthy, it's like people are still going to eat there because all they've got in their mind is the big yellow arches.
Yeah.
So you're still advertising it. So what you need to do if that thought pops in your mind is just, nope, drop it. Nope, self-loathing, drop it. All right? And that, I think, can be the process of unwinding from that addiction and whatever other addictions there are as well.
I like the take. I've not heard this. I've not thought about it this way before. But, and correct me if I've mistaken this, but you're saying in a sense that when you're watching excessive amounts of porn, you're putting yourself as the voyeuristic observer of a sexual situation going down, not a participant. And it's like, the more you do that, you reaffirm that you're not a participant.
Yeah.
So that's, in addition to the self-loathing aspect, that's also an aspect that I find very interesting. I've not thought of it that way before. It's like, yeah, you're not participating. you're a voyeur to something that's happening.
Yeah, and also this sense that if you're trying to be a more powerful man in the world of women, right? In the world of women, and you have this recognition that now you are impotent, right? You've got rid of all of the thing that was giving you the drive to want to meet girls. And there's this girl on the screen and she's looking at the camera, like getting paid to have done this. And you're feeling weakened and self-loathing, and she's smiling at you as in like, I'm getting paid to like bring you to the point of temptation that destroys your life, right? That destroys your sex drive, and it's not just sex drive, right? Chronic masturbation doesn't just kill sex drive, it kills willpower, it kills motivation, it kills passion, it kills everything, right?
Yeah.
So and so I think there's this submissiveness that guys fall into when they get addicted to porn, where to then suddenly, how can a guy come from that and see a beautiful woman in the street and be dominant, you know, be a presence, know what he wants, look at her in the eye? Because his last vision of a girl was her getting one over him, making money out of his lack of willpower.
That's the point, and I've never thought about it like that. Well, Sam, I think that's time. I think that's about everything. Thank you.
Can we have an English handshake?
We can, sir.
I've missed these. Everyone's doing all sorts of nonsense now, aren't they?
Have you seen on YouTube the alpha handshake?
No.
There's a guy, I think it's a YouTube channel called Teaching Men's Fashion, and I don't know if he did this ironically or not, but he did a video where he's like instructing people how to do a dominant alpha handshake.
Is it going over?
So I'll show you. So I think it's something to the effect of it. Well, when they go to shake your hand, you need to be alpha. So when they go to shake your hand, you grab their forearm and then you pull them in and then you look them in the eye and shit like that. Like he's got loads of step 1, 2, 3, 4.
Is it English or American?
I think he's American.
Okay.
So
then it's hard to know.
It is hard to know. But yeah, appreciate you coming on the podcast.
It's been a pleasure, man. I've really enjoyed it.
Wonderful. Well, guys, that was it. So if you want to check out the show notes, go to ikario.com/038. And so if you want to leave a voice note, a voice message to us, that is anchor.fm/ikario. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube, follow all of our stuff, buy all of our stuff, just become fans instantly. That is the solution to your problems. That is it for this week. Take care.
Cheers, guys.
And see you next week.